Hi folks, hope you're all well out there still. I know it's been a little bit of a while since I made my last video, and for that reason I'd probably just recommend that, if you do want to catch my ad hoc videos that I publish, just subscribe to the channel and at least then maybe you'll be notified. I've actually had Matomo on my list about the last 3 or 4 weeks to do a video because I realized the previous video that I did about metadata, and I'll put a link below the video and in the top right corner for it, was about the leaking of metadata, and I touched on using Matomo instead of Google Analytics, but I'd not actually done a proper video on Matomo Analytics itself. So I thought, you know what, now that we've got this headline that's just happened, the latest GDPR news, Google Analytics now illegal in Austria, and here's part of the article over there. I thought, you know what, now actually is the right time. I really must do this video now. So here it is. So really the question probably is, what is Matomo? Well, Matomo is an alternative to Google Analytics and probably a very good one. And I'll explain in this video also, there is an easy way to transfer all your Google Analytics data across to Matomo. So there's no need to lose all the analytics and the data that you've already got. But the chief difference really is that you've got two options with Matomo itself. You can purchase their cloud service and host it on their platform. One of the differences with that is they're not utilizing that analytics and the data from your site and then selling it onwards or making use of it with other third parties. So it's not a bad option to go for if you don't have the facilities to self-host. But the other is the on-premise option, which is self-hosting. And I'm going to go through my setup just now and show you what it looks like. So in essence, the big difference here is that you have got 100% control of the data. You own the data. If it's your website and you're running Matomo, all the stats and the data that's being collected, you are in control of yourself. It's not passing out to a third party that may be making use of it. So yeah, this is what they're really emphasizing on their website. It's an ethical alternative to Google Analytics. A lot of what for most people are using in Google Analytics, this should do the job well enough, if not more than anybody needs really. So it is about taking back control of your data. And of course, remember all your visitors or users of your website as well. In essence, you are accountable. That's what Austria was really saying. If you're hosting a website and you're passing your data out to a third party, you could actually be held accountable for that because the people are visiting your website. So Matomo is 100% open source. It actually grew up and out of, I think it's Piwik, if I remember correctly. Piwik was the name before for the name of the application. It's been since been an open source application. It changed its name to Matomo. You will find it as well if you are making use of any cPanel type hosting. One of those quick install applications that you can install under cPanel hosting is Matomo Analytics actually. So it really is pretty easy to install alongside most other hosting. As I said, that really pretty much is the website. We can just look at quickly at the pricing options. So that's your on-premises. Actually, as I said there, its cost is 0. You host it yourself on your hosting. Cloud is 19 euros. That's hosting on their site. You're essentially paying for the hosting and the support. That's what you're paying for. But you don't have to set it up yourself or do very much really. But you will also see that the on-premise solution is quite attractive. You've got a lot of unlimited functionalities here which are limited on the cloud hosting. And that is all actually visible on their website as well. So I think without sort of further ado, let me go through then my hosting site. And I've unfortunately converted it only about 2-3 months ago from one hosting to another, and I got off Google Analytics maybe a bit too quickly. I didn't realize I could actually port my data across. So I'll show you where that happens as well. This is the dashboard view of Matomo. These are widgets over here. So you can delete widgets and add widgets here depending on what plugins and functionality you've got enabled. You'll also notice that although it's a dashboard view, if you click here on websites, I've got, for example, 2 websites that are making use of Matomo Analytics. So Gadgeteer ZA is my main WordPress site, and then I've got a photos site running on Piwigo. Various of these websites, such as WordPress or even Piwigo and certain of the others, have got plugins and extensions that will help link to Matomo. So you've got your Matomo hosting, which is what you're seeing here, and then the site that you're monitoring has some form of either an agent or a plugin running, or it has some JavaScript code or something else that's embedded in the headers. For example, this is my WordPress site, and you'll see I've actually installed the WordPress Matomo settings plugin. This really means that I've got a bunch of options and things that I can just select and click and tick. And there's a couple more advanced things I can do with this, but the point is that I just install the plugin and I link it through this Connect service to my Matomo website. Done, finished, and it's ready to go. Piwigo is very much similar. There's a plugin available. So Matomo has got quite a lot of support in the various applications, especially the open source applications. If not, they give instructions. When we get to that relevant part, I'll show you on the site how you embed the tracking information or the JavaScript stuff if you want to. So on the dashboard view, like I said, you can switch between the sites over there if you want to. You can also then choose what period of stats are you looking at. So yes, I did unfortunately start this only in November, so I don't have a lot of stats at the moment. I've selected here at the moment the period of month, but you could make it year. You could put a custom range. You could have it by just this week if you wanted to, or just today. I'll select the default of month. This actually had defaulted to month, but what you'll also see on each widget is there's various things you can chop and change over here. So you can export the data into CSV, XML, JSON, RSS, whatever you want to do. You can also save it as an image. You can add annotations. For example, here is an annotation. I just put it in as an example. And you can change the period for the particular widget. As I said, this did default originally to months. And you'll see there it's now changed to a monthly. It's just a stat per month at the moment, but I can go back to weeks. And then it shows you the weekly figures. And obviously, if you're hovering over it, you can see there it's 2,133 visits that week to my site, 3,300, and whatever else there is there. This is where you change the period. This is now, because I'm in weeks, this is 26 weeks long, but you could make it 12 weeks long, for example. So yeah, really up to you. What I'm showing here, mostly the default widgets. So for example, visits in real time. This is showing you in the last 24 hours at 119 visits, and there were 174 actions. That is things like clicking or searching or doing things on the pages or on the site. In the last 30 minutes, there were 4 visits, and then it's showing you here the most recent visits as well. So for example, there was today, Thursday, January the 20th, 1820, that's South African time. It's a visit from the United States. There's not a lot of information there, so this guy's probably blocking certain information as well. Then things like this one is from China. It was on iOS using Safari browser. You can also see if there's a visitor profile. There's a bit more information like screen resolutions, iOS versions. I showed on the metadata leakage video a lot of how much of this type of information actually is available. Oh, sorry, it's Turkey, not China. And it'll also show you what pages the person has visited. I think if we go down, we might find, yes, somebody leaking a lot of information. So if I look at that one, there's probably a little bit more information there from Saudi Arabia. And then they've got a bit of a gamification over here about just getting certain of your things activated and set up. There's also a visitors map. So this will be the period, in other words, January, showing you in terms of these colors, how many visits per country as well as a percentage. So you can get an idea of where your visitors are coming from. Then also, which are your popular page URLs, which are the ones being visited the most. and it's not necessarily your recent posts. It can be quite, old posts. That's by URL. Then there's also by page title, and then there's also by just country. There's some overview summary of the various visits and stats. So things like the maximum number of actions by one visit by one person was 206 actions. And then also on the summary side, on the channel side, you can see things like search engine keywords and search criteria being used. Remember, this all gets passed in the transferring URL when the person clicks and then visits your site. That's just how it works with any search engine or moving, crossing or migrating from one site to the other. Social networks, I could see that most of my visits in January came from Twitter, then Facebook, which I've got zero presence on, so somebody must have been sharing or retweeting or doing something on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Reddit, and so on. I'll show you also where you can set some of this up. And then also things like website referrals. So these are part of the referral URL that comes when the person clicks. This is my Google Blogger address. Some people are obviously actually watching it. Then SqueakMe is a Friendica site. Wikipedia, there must have been a link on a Wikipedia site of some sorts to my website or a post or page on my site. And then various other sites as well. So that really sort of pretty much what you're going to see on the dashboard view. On the visitor side, this is now information and overview about the actual visitors. Again, there's that overview we've seen and the stats we've already seen. The visitors log, this is where you could wind back to go and have a look at a particular entry, or you could filter by country or whatever you want to do here. But you could take, let me just see, here's somebody that's visited 2 pages. So you can see they've come into the open source self-hosted web bookmark service and they've exited out of there as well. Let me just see. It's again the profile. You'll notice I'm not identifying specific IP addresses, just general locations down to city level usually. That was the real time that we also saw on the first one. We've seen the real-time map already. This is a bit of a breakdown on the location. You can see by continent. There is a total of 87 distinct countries, popularity by country, and then also by region. We've got visitors' devices being used. So the majority were on desktop. Smartphone 903, tablet 68. This is again a lot of information that you're already sharing with your own browser. That's how this information gets to the site or to Google Analytics or wherever. Yeah, it seems to be you can also browse from cameras now as well by the looks of it, and car browsers. So, again, that information would be available. Then device models, you can see by generic desktop. Unknown means it is being blocked, which is good. iPhone, Google Nexus 5, Apple generic desktops, that sort of thing. Huawei, Nova 5, Nova 7. Then device by brand name, and then also screen resolutions. This can be quite important for developers, if you want to know what sort of size screen developers and so on are visiting your site. This is a breakdown of users' operating systems. So again, Windows 10 in the majority, followed by Linux, Android, Mac, so on. Browsers, Google Chrome. Browser engines. So this should include, for example, all the Chrome derivatives, I would imagine. And again, unknowns are probably people that are blocking that information. Browser plugins that are installed. The times of the day. So I've set this to my local time, South African time, but it just gives me an idea then by time of day, when are most people visiting. User IDs, you'll see nothing. I'm not recording things like user IDs. You'd use user IDs if you're going to track people across multiple days or different sites or things like that. So that's typically something that Google Analytics works very, very strongly on. Everybody gets an ID and you are tracked across all sorts of sites. So the fact that I block user IDs means I just see everybody as a unique visit. I'm not seeing how many people even are, for example, repeat visitors. And then bot trackers. What's important with the bot trackers is there is a plugin specifically for this that helps identify the bots because they get excluded from the stats. Otherwise, you're going to see things like 10,000 visits in January to my website, and that's not true. That was actually by these various bots that are scanning the site, and hopefully not for vulnerabilities. Normally they're scanning for indexing and search engines and that sort of thing. So that's the visitor's view. Then the behavior view is really what were people doing in your site? What pages did they land on? Where did they exit? What did they click on? What did they search on? That sort of thing. So again, that shows up. This was the most popular page being visited for January. Obviously, if I expand this now for the full period, maybe we can actually just change it. Okay, this is a bit more complete. It's the whole of December and January, but you can still see this was a very popular site. It just gives an idea also of what sort of web pages, what posts are people actually interested in and are they coming to look at, because then maybe you want to do more of those, you know. What pages, these are the entry pages. In other words, this is what drew them to the site. How did they actually land on the site? Well, these are the ones that they actually arrived at, and these are the pages that they left on. So in most cases, people came in and possibly left on that same page. That's the actual page titles, not the URL. This is the site search. So this shows you what sort of words were being searched for on the website itself. Again, this is maybe stuff people weren't finding. Maybe you want to go and, you know, post more content and do information on it. And these were the pages I think visited following a site search. So this is what it possibly took them to. These are the various outlinks. These are the links that are on my pages that people clicked on to go and visit to get more information or to go view the original article on. I don't have downloads actually. It might be for images, but the PDF. I have got actually one PDF there I see. So if you've got images or documents that can be downloaded, this one will give you the stats on that. I don't have any event data. Neither content. Okay, this is just general engagement again. Returning visits over time. Okay, interesting. This probably is cookies that are not deleted on the client side that it is possibly identifying then as a returning visit. So I'm getting returning visit stats. The duration periods, visits per number of pages, visits by days since last visit. So that's how long have people taken before they come back again. And visits by visit number. Transitions, I don't think I've got anything set up. Oh, I have there. Okay, I think this is also where they're coming in and where they're going through and where they're going out on the page. There's the outlinks. I've turned off the campaigns for RSS feed, but you could, I've disabled that in the end because it was adding a lot of clunk and trackers and tracker pixels to my RSS feed, which I didn't want to have. But you can do that if you want to. So you could actually pick up how many people are clicking and reading from your RSS feed and coming to your website as well. That's also possible. And then performance is the page performance, the load stats on the particular pages. So you can see, you know, when is your page, what sort of speed or performance hits or parts of the page are affecting the performance experience for users loading the pages. So there's, for example, this one, we can see there it had 473 views, average the network time itself 0.13 of a second, average server time nearly a second to load, and the transfer time, that would be probably like related to the network, I would think. The DOM processing 3.94 seconds, and average page load time. So if you go down here and you maybe sort on that, for example, I could go and have a look and see which are the pages that are taking the very longest to load on average for people to go and get. I should probably go and have a look then and see why these pages are taking so long. It may be a very big image, maybe something like that. So that is the behavior side. The acquisition is where do your users actually come from and how are they finding you. So this is just evolution of the stats over time, whether it's direct entry or visits. And here is all channels at the moment. So if you've got campaigns set up, like that RSS feed, you'd see how many were coming from there. Oops, I see there I had feeds. So I've still got some old feed stats. It's actually quite a lot of visits. So the RSS feed itself I know is very popular. That's a lot of people follow my posts via an RSS feed, and then if there's something interesting, they come and they visit the site, and you can see they spend an average of 5 minutes on the site actually. Then search engines, we already looked at some of these. These are the type of things being searched for. Social networks we've already looked at, as well as the websites, and these are the totals of the, or the summary should I say, of the referrers. Then on search engines and keywords, it's again more of a drill in on the same thing. Remember here as well, you have got some settings you can set as well for all of these. These are all just basically widgets, and you can change a lot of this as well, you know, to suit what you want to see. You can export again, as I said before, and I think you can filter or search as well. So you could search within these results above to find something as well. I'm thinking DuckDuckGo is not going to leak very much anyway. No keywords defined. I think Bing leaks a little bit, doesn't it? No, well, one anyway, starting a WordPress site. Quant is also quite privacy orientated, so I think they are withholding a lot of that now. There is actually a paid plugin for more detailed search information, and we've really looked at these website referrals. I think it does give you some idea of where they're coming from on the site. I think Wikipedia, can't actually see much there at the moment. Social networks breakdown, that was my campaign feed, but you'll see it is disabled now. I've just started one, I think, for the URL. I thought I had actually, but it doesn't look like I have. I had actually, it might be under goals, sorry. So that's acquisition. You can also set goals though, based on things that you want to achieve. So you could have said, where the goals become important actually is around this thing like campaign tracking. The reason why people might want things like campaign tracking and to set this is things like pay-per-click adverts, display and banner adverts, that type of thing, where you've got to account if you've got adverts and things like it on your website, or you've got sponsors and advertisers, you may have to provide some statistics, for example, on how many people are clicking or coming back from a newsletter or from various social networks or other marketplaces, or that have clicked on a banner advert and so on. So in many cases, if you are doing sponsoring advertising commercially, then campaign tracking and goals is quite an important thing to look at. So I have set up, for example, I only did it today, so I've had no visits today, but I've basically set up one on my open source web page, and this will track now the number of people actually clicking on that page. If, for example, I had to show that, you know, what was the visitor rate that was seeing an advert, say, on that page. There aren't any adverts on my page, but you can add a new goal by just giving it a name, a description. You can say when visitors or whatever visit a page title. So you could also use a string or pattern over here to determine whether people visit a whole bunch of different pages with titles that have got a certain name or parts of a name in it as well. Send an event, download a file, or even stay for longer than a certain amount of period. And if it is a value that's attributed to visits per page, you could also put it in so many cents per page, and it'll start sort of tracking it and giving you an idea of what sort of money you're getting out of it, really. So that's the goal side. The marketplace, so these are all the third-party and other plugins that are available for Matomo. Now, some of these are premium paid, like you'll see over here, from so much per year. This is also how Matomo makes their money. Remember, they're producing the software and supporting it and doing all that sort of thing. So some of these are obviously ways they make their money. And in other instances, it's third-party people that have produced a plugin that they want to sell possibly, but many of them are also free, and you'll see they'll just have an install like this. And I'll go down here just to give you an idea of sort of what is available. You used to have to define a specific IP to location to convert an IP address to know what city a person or country a person came from. But now there is actually a lot of the basic stuff is already in the site, which is good enough for most people. You don't really need to install that and configure it anymore. But there is one that I do want to show specifically when we get down to it, and that is the Google Analytics importer, because don't make the mistake I made. I'd set everything up, and in my haste I just completely deleted and fully removed all my Google Analytics that's got years of data, only to realize later on, oh, you know what, I could have actually just imported that summary stats anyway. So yeah, that was a bit sad. I lost all that. So I think from this you get a pretty good feeling that there's a lot of additional sort of expansion that you can do here. Okay, I seem to have actually missed the Google Analytics, but let me just do a quick search for it. And then I can also show you how you can get additional information. So this is the Google Analytics import. It is a free import, and you can just click on more to get more information about it and any requirements or anything else it needs. But in essence, you would set up Matomo, install this, get it linked to your Google Analytics, make sure you've imported your stats, and then of course you can delete your Google Analytics if you wish. These are the widgets that you see on the front dashboard and so on. So you can do a lot more customization. You can also, I think, place your widgets remotely as well on other websites. So you could, for example, show your visit stats on your other website being monitored if you wish. And there's also a lot of a very rich API for developers here. So if you've got an application that you're developing and you want to extract and display certain information from the analytics and the stats, this is how you would actually connect and get this information out of Matomo. And there's a real wealth, very good documentation as well, and API reference documents and that sort of thing. So that's all available there. And then the last thing under this view really is the diagnostic information. Obviously you want to see lots of green ticks, there. I don't have any tracking failures at the moment. What's also nice with the config file is instead of having to go down to a command line interpreter and open an editor and do things, you can actually edit Matomo's config file right here from the dashboard. But, just be aware though that if you do this, these config files, just be very careful what you're actually updating, because you can of course break the system. You've also got your brute force log here. If you've got your brute force log blocking on, it will show you what IPs are currently blocked. And then device detection. I think this is where you can set up your strings, your user agent strings and so on as well. So yeah, that's pretty well much that part of it. I think the only other thing I really want to go through a bit is to show you some of the administration settings. This is sort of the dashboard view, if you want to call it that, of the administrator side. And you've got quick links like add another website or add another user, a Matomo user, to log in and make use of stats. And you could set these up, of course, also as view only or fellow administrators or whatever the case is. You've got a summary, system check, and they just advertise again some certain of the premium features here you might be interested in. Under personal settings, you've got really just, clock times, email address, what you want to see by default on the dashboard, everything, or just a specific website, and report date to load by default. Normally I just look at yesterday. Then on security, that would be obviously if you wanted to change your password, setting up your two-factor authentication and authentication tokens. Then you can also set up reports that can be emailed to you daily, weekly, monthly, or whatever the case is. and you're just going to give your report a name. You're going to choose what segment you want there, whether it's going to be weekly, monthly, daily. Sorry, that's the when it's going to be sent to you, weekly, monthly, daily. And this will be whether it's going to be a weekly report or a daily report or monthly report or yearly or whatever. And you can send it by email or mobile if you've got mobile. It basically connects with two bulk SMS services. You can say what time of the day the report will be sent. I've got it at 2 a.m. at the moment. Further down here, you've got a couple of settings that you can just set and tick on for your report. Things like you could maybe get a summary of bot trackers, or say you just want to see the top 10 bots, you want a visit summary, you want a summary by country, and you want to have a look at a performance overview of your pages, and maybe just an update on your goals, for example. And that's really it. You can just say create report. And that's as easy it is really to do reports. Under system, the archiving is basically it's storing everything in raw data, which takes time and CPU cycles, etc., to process and to store. So you've got the option here really of archiving, especially once you've already got summary reports done and you don't always need the raw data anymore. So you can actually archive data and have it deleted really. You've got your SMTP settings here for email notifications and things to go to you. And then you've also got your brand settings like a logo, for example, and a favicon. And you can delete old user logs and reports and set a trusted host name. I've got cross-origin resource sharing turned on there. This was, as I said, if you had that GeoIP2 server modules. I'm not making use of it. And you can enable your brute force detection and have a couple of settings for that as well. And your two-factor authentication. So that's the general settings. It's pretty generic. This is where you would go to create new users if you wanted to give users view access or whatever to the Matomo website. Plugins is a summary of the plugins down here as well, which are activated or not. You can uninstall as well if they're no longer active. This is now where the search engines and social networks are that it will recognize. So you can set these up here. These at the moment are all the search engines that it will recognize and identify as having sent traffic to you. And you can go and check if one is, for example, on there. I think .brave.com, for example. You can say check URL. And yes, it has got it already identified. Actually, it's detected as Brave. It's already in here. But you could also go and add them as well if if it's not one of the recognized ones below here. And on the social network side, these are all the various social networks. So this is, for example, where you'd go and add a new social network with a name, and you just give the hostname address. And I've added quite a few custom ones here. It already has got a lot of the Fediverse sites, for example, which is quite nice. So say, for example, Mastodon, it already recognizes a whole bunch of different Mastodon instances as well. But if they weren't, you could, like I said, go add those yourself if you want to. Pinterest, Telegram, and that sort of thing over there as well. So this just helps build up your, more meaningful stats if you're looking at your dashboard. On the geolocation side, as I said, if you choose this option, which is good enough for most people, then it's not going to need really any further configuration. That's really it. If you wanted to choose the more detailed one with third-party geolocation stats, which are far more detailed, some of these you've got to subscribe to a service, an external service, and you've got a lot of configurations sometimes you have to do as well. And for the one I'm using, I have got it at the moment. It does update every week anyway. I'm not using the ISP database, but if you wanted to, you could track also by ISP service provider, where people were coming from or who their service provider is. This will be for mobile messaging if users wanted to manage their own SMS provider for notifications and so on. Then they have got these two providers, bulk SMS providers, that are already in there at the moment. The bot tracker, this is just giving you an idea, I think, of the bots that are being tracked. Detects bots and spiders and counts their visits without tracking them in the visitor log. So the ones that are identified that are in here will be excluded from your visit stats. So if you do find you're getting abnormally high hits from a specific bot and it's not in this list, then you can go and add it here as well. You can see they're under new at the bottom. Privacy settings. So this will be of interest, of course, to GDPR located users in Europe or anywhere else as well. You can first of all generalize just anonymized data. So I do have set the anonymized visitor's IP address. I've got IP addresses anonymized to 2 bytes, which is sort of a close enough indication to give a city, but not really to pinpoint or to, identify individual users and that sort of thing. You can also fully mask if you wanted to. And if you were tracking things like user IDs and you were sharing this still with other people or other users or viewers, you could also replace the ID number specifically with pseudonyms. That would also help just, I suppose, obscure information. Because, for example, with the WordPress plugin, you could pass through the login name of that user through to Matopo. And then on this side in Matopo, you'd be identifying that person by name. That's a case where you might want to tick on and anonymize the order ID. You can also turn on force tracking without cookies. In other words, this overrides the user's cookie settings, but that's not nice, so we don't do that. So you have got some options though. I just want to check here. Don't anonymize the referrer. Oh, this is just the referring URL. I do want to know actually, like I said, where a person comes from Google search or they're coming from Twitter or whatever the case is. So you can also anonymize that as well if you wanted to. You could regularly delete old raw data, the aggregated report data as well. And this is just anonymizing older data. Because by default, I think it's doing the anonymization as it's storing the data. So that'll just be a way that you could also do backdate it if you want to do it. This is giving the users the opt-out message. If you are supposed to, so for example, if you have got users registering on your site, an account, or they're registering to make comments or doing certain other things, you're probably going to be obliged by law to give them an opt-out of tracking as well. Then this will actually can pop up the customized message to offer people the option to opt out. At the moment, I think it will be shown here. I am not displaying that. This is then every time somebody visits, they get this message popping up, and it irritates a lot of people as well. So what I'm doing is I am honoring the do not track support. In other words, if your browser is set to do not track, I am not tracking you. It's automatically honoring that. Then this is the asking for consent. There's a bit of guidance here about how to do it, and I think you could then activate those various settings as well. It gives you a nice overview of GDPR as well, with checklists, what the individual's rights are, awareness and documentation, security procedures, and things about data retention as well. And then also the various GDPR tools, and you can do that per site as well. So these tools will be, for example, if somebody requests, please erase my data, you could use this to go and find their user ID and delete their data and remove it from the site. But just remembering, that's of course if you've got your user ID stored. I'm not even storing ID, so I've got no way of finding anybody's information or deleting it. That's privacy. And then on the website side, this is where you'd set up your one or more websites that you're tracking. So I've got my main website and I've got my photos website that I'm tracking. It's just those two. And if you wanted to, you could add new ones here. Then the various settings, you just got a couple of other global settings that you can apply. This is where you'd get your tracking code, or you would set up the tracking for the website. So if there was a plugin, the plugin would help connect anyway. You probably wouldn't have to worry about this at all. But if, for example, the site that you want to track stats on or data on doesn't have a plugin or any other easy way of connecting, then you'd look at things like, say, JavaScript tracking. Then what you would do is, this helps give you some guidance here on generating tracking code that you could actually go plug into the header or the footer of the pages that you wanted to track. Obviously, you'll see they've already got, for certain of these, there's a lot of these sites have already got tracking set up for Matomo. But in essence, you tick on and off what you wanted here. It would adjust that code, and you would just go and copy and paste this code and go and stick it wherever you needed to on your header tag or something on your site. So it's perfectly easy to use basically on any site you wanted to make use of. This will be image tracking, HTTPI API that you can track as well. So you've got a good couple of options there. But this is the key page for helping, as I said, link the sites if you don't have a plugin already available on your other site. Then this is the goals. I just set up a goal for my open source page already. It's not showing anything yet at the moment, but that was what I showed you a bit earlier on. Custom dimensions I haven't actually used. Custom data, okay. You can obviously define a bit of custom data that you could track as well. The platform, again, is the marketplace. We've already really gone through that. Widgets, API. Yeah, we've basically been through this already, these other settings. So that is really about it then. Well, there's actually just one important thing that I actually forgot there. After looking at all this data that you can collect and view, from user device settings to countries to whatever, the one thing you can still do on the dashboard view, we did look at the date settings, but you can also filter. It's set at the moment to showing all visits, but you can filter on things like, I've set something up here, filter, showing just people from South Africa that are using Linux. And based on that, you can start drilling in deeper to see what are those people looking at, obviously where they are from. It shows a closer view for South Africa as well, but it shows sort of a segmented or a niche sort of view of your data. So that's quite an important one that you probably are going to make use of. And you can add, I've added South Africans already, but you can add a new segment. You can give it a name, say USA if you want to. And then the action, maybe, these are all the things you can choose to filter on. So I could actually choose here, say for visit location, I could choose a country is equal to, well, now where's United States? USA. Okay, there is something a bit odd. I did have to choose a country code for South Africa for some reason as well, equal to ZA, not South Africa. But okay, let me just take United Kingdom instead then. There we go. And you can make an AND condition. So it'll be everybody from United Kingdom and say, let me see, well, you could choose any of these things. You could choose by event. We've done location. You could, like I've already chosen, you could choose by device model, for example, is iPhone. It'll be iPhone users from United Kingdom. Well, sorry, I've already labeled it USA, but anyway, you'll see there it's United Kingdom iPhone users, and that's now segmenting on that part of the people that have visited your site. So that can be pretty useful, sort of analyzing a little bit deeper as well. I think the power for Matomo really comes in through the plugins as well. It has got pretty good integration, as I've showed, with various websites, but with the API as well as the third-party plugins in on the marketplace, you've got a tremendous amount of power in terms of what you really can collect and view and do with it. So it's really up to you, I suppose, to decide how much and how little and what sort of overview you want. But I've been very, very happy with it. I've been using it for a little while now, and for my purposes, certainly as a general blogger and that sort of thing, it's been more than good enough for me to make use of it. You know, at the end of the day, it really is respecting people's privacy more, and you're not sitting with that issue where your data or their data is being shared out to third parties, and you've got no control over where it's going and what's been done with it. So yeah, I hope it helped you a bit and gave a little bit of an overview of Matoma, and I'd certainly recommend it. I'm a happy user, and so that's really it. And stay safe out there, and I'll see you in my next video.